Welcome back to History of Simple Things. Today's topic comes from one of our viewers, Josh Adams. Thanks for the suggestion, Josh. You asked, what led to the rise and fall of the iPod? Remember the days when carrying 1,000 songs in your pocket felt like pure magic? If you grew up in the early 2000s, chances are you either owned an iPod or desperately wanted one. It wasn't just a gadget, it was a cultural phenomenon. But today the iPod is little more than a nostalgic memory. What happened? How did this revolutionary device go from being Apple's crown jewel to a discontinued relic? Stick around as we uncover the incredible journey of the iPod right here on History of Simple Things. Before the iPod, listening to music on the go was, quite frankly, a hassle. You had clunky CD players that skipped every time you moved too fast, or MP3 players with tiny storage capacities that could barely hold an album. And let's not even talk about the mess of illegally downloading music through Napster and Kazaa. The digital music revolution was brewing, but it lacked a device that could tie it all together. Apple saw an opportunity, and they took it. In October 2001, Steve Jobs took the stage to introduce the very first iPod. At the time, Apple wasn't the tech giant we know today. It was still recovering from near bankruptcy in the 90s. But Jobs had a vision. He promised a sleek, user-friendly device that could store 1,000 songs and fit in your pocket. It had a scroll wheel for easy navigation, a minimalist design, and, most importantly, came with iTunes, which made organizing and transferring music incredibly simple. The iPod wasn't just another MP3 player, it was a revolution. By the mid-2000s, the iPod had become a cultural icon. With its sleek white design and signature earbuds, it was instantly recognizable. The ads featuring silhouettes dancing against brightly colored backgrounds were everywhere, making the device even cooler. Apple kept innovating, launching smaller and more advanced models like the iPod Mini, iPod Nano, and iPod Shuffle. Then came the iPod Touch, which was basically an iPhone without the phone capabilities. The iPod was no longer just a music player, it was a fashion statement, a status symbol, and a must-have gadget. The iPod didn't just change how we listened to music, it changed the entire music industry. iTunes made it easy and legal to buy individual songs instead of entire albums, forever altering the way artists released and sold music. Physical CDs started collecting dust as digital downloads took over. The music industry had to adapt, and some artists, like Radiohead, began experimenting with new ways to distribute their music online. In many ways, the iPod paved the way for the streaming era we live in today. The iPod didn't just change the music industry, it changed Apple itself. Before the iPod, Apple was primarily known for computers, and not everyone was convinced the company could compete with giants like Microsoft. But the iPod's success gave Apple a new identity as an innovator in consumer electronics. It introduced millions of new customers to the Apple ecosystem, creating brand loyalty that would later help propel the iPhone, iPad, and MacBook to worldwide dominance. In a way, the iPod was Apple's gateway to becoming the trillion-dollar company we know today. As the iPod soared in popularity, competitors scrambled to get a piece of the market. Microsoft introduced the Zune, Sony tried to revive the Walkman, and other brands released MP3 players with larger screens and more features. But Apple had a secret weapon, its ecosystem. The seamless integration between iTunes and the iPod made switching to another brand a hassle. Apple doubled down on design, marketing, and constant innovation, ensuring that the iPod remained the dominant player for years. Still, the competition signaled that the music industry was evolving, and the standalone MP3 player's days were numbered. But as much as the iPod revolutionized music, its downfall was inevitable. Ironically, Apple itself was responsible for it. In 2007, Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone, A device that could not only make calls and browse the internet but also do everything an iPod could. Why carry two devices when you could have it all in one? Slowly but surely, the iPod became redundant. Apple tried to keep it alive, releasing new versions of the iPod Touch with better screens and more storage. But with the rise of smartphones and streaming services like Spotify, fewer people were interested in owning a dedicated music player. By the 2010s, iPod sales had plummeted. In 2014, Apple discontinued the iPod Classic, the model that started it all. The iPod Nano and Shuffle followed in 2017. By 2022, Apple officially retired the iPod Touch, marking the end of an era. The company quietly acknowledged its impact, but made it clear that the future was in iPhones and Apple Music. Even though the iPod is gone, its impact is undeniable. It shaped the way we consume music, pushed the tech industry forward, and helped turn Apple into the powerhouse it is today. Many of the innovations that made the iPod great, sleek design, intuitive interfaces, and seamless integration with software, live on in Apple's current products. And let's be real, who doesn't get a little nostalgic when they see an old iPod lying around? The iPod wasn't just a gadget, it was a status symbol, a pop culture phenomenon, and even a fashion statement. Celebrities flaunted them, TV shows featured them, and those iconic white earbuds became instantly recognizable. They weren't just headphones, they were a badge of coolness. The iPod even influenced language. Remember when iPod became synonymous with MP3 players in general? It cemented Apple's place not just in tech, but in mainstream culture, proving that good design and smart marketing could turn a simple music player into an era-defining icon. The iPod may be gone, but it will never be forgotten. It wasn't just a device, it was a revolution that defined an era. It changed the way we experienced music and left a lasting mark on technology and pop culture. More than that, it reminded us of the magic of discovering new songs, curating playlists, and carrying our favorite tunes with us everywhere we went. Its story is a testament to how technology evolves, how something groundbreaking today can become obsolete tomorrow. But just because the iPod is gone doesn't mean its influence has disappeared. In every smartphone, streaming service, and digital music library, the spirit of the iPod lives on. Thank you for watching. Do you still have an old iPod? What's your favorite memory of using one? Let us know in the comments. And if you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them as well. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.